All right, so let's dive into data governance.
Okay.
We've got this report, the Global Data Barometer,
All right.
the Center for International Governance Innovation, CIGI.
Yeah.
And it's really looking at how countries are managing data,
Uh-huh.
especially when we talk about public service, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Making a difference in people's lives.
Absolutely.
And, we always hear about how data has all this potential to solve these massive problems.
Right.
But there are a lot of challenges, too,
Huge challenges.
like protecting privacy, keeping up with the latest technology,
hmm
and making sure that everyone benefits,
Yeah, ensuring those benefits are shared widely.
not just a select few.
And that's really where data governance comes in, right?
Exactly. So it's like setting the ground rules,
Yeah.
making sure data is used ethically,
Responsibly, ethically.
making sure the benefits are actually, felt by everyone.
Exactly.
So what's the Global Data Barometer telling us?
Well, they looked at 109 countries.
Wow, that's a pretty good sample size.
It is.
Yeah.
And the first thing that stood out to me was that countries are recognizing that data is important,
Okay.
but actually putting good governance into practice,
Yeah.
that's where things get a little bit more inconsistent.
Ah, so it's one thing to acknowledge it, but another thing to actually do it.
Yeah, totally.
Okay. Are there any, bright spots in the report, though?
Well, the good news is that most countries have some kind of data protection framework in place.
Okay, so at least there's some kind of structure.
Some recognition, yeah,
Yeah.
that protection is needed.
Okay, so that's good.
Absolutely.
But I'm guessing there's a but coming.
There is a but.
Yeah.
Only about half of those frameworks are actually considered robust.
Robust meaning.
Robust meaning they have strong enforcement mechanisms,
Oh, okay.
and they can actually hold people accountable.
So it's like having a speed limit sign, but no one to actually give you a ticket if you speed.
Precisely.
What's the point,
Yes.
right?
Exactly, and that lack of strong enforcement can actually erode public trust.
Yeah, makes sense.
Think about it from a citizen's perspective.
Uh,
Would you feel comfortable sharing your data if you weren't confident it was going to be protected?
Probably not, no.
Yeah, and so that lack of trust can really hinder progress.
Makes sense. Are there any, specific regions or examples where these gaps are particularly worrisome?
Well, the report did point to some concerns in sub-Saharan Africa.
Yeah.
There's a big push to use data to drive development and innovation there.
Yeah, I've heard about that.
But the legal frameworks are still lagging behind,
Oh, I see.
especially with technologies like AI advancing so rapidly.
So it's like trying to, I don't know, build a house on a foundation that's not really set.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, that makes sense. What about open data?
Yeah.
I mean, the idea of making government data public, that sounds amazing for transparency and
Yeah.
innovation, right?
For sure, it has a lot of potential.
Yeah.
And a lot of countries are actually on board with the idea. Okay. The report found 74 countries with open data policies.
Okay, that's great.
Well,
There's always a but, right?
Less than half of those policies address the need for data standards.
Data standards. Now, what are those exactly?
So imagine you're trying to work with another agency on a project,
Yeah.
but their data is formatted in a way that's completely incompatible with yours.
Ugh. Yeah, like trying to fit a square peg in a round hole.
Totally. It's a recipe for headaches and wasted time.
I've been there for sure.
Yeah,
So data standards are kind of like creating a universal language for data
exactly.
so everyone can understand it, use it effectively.
You got it.
Okay, so it's not just about having the data, it's about making sure it's accessible and usable.
Mm-hmm.
And that requires more than just good intentions.
Right.
It requires good governance.
Absolutely.
Now, speaking of good governance, one thing that the Global Data Barometer highlighted was capacity building.
Yeah, crucial, especially in lower income countries.
So what exactly does capacity building mean in this context?
So it's about having the resources, the skilled personnel,
Hmm.
and the institutional infrastructure to actually put these data governance frameworks into action.
Right, so you can have all the rules on paper, but if you don't have the people and the tools to actually make them work,
Yeah.
it's not going to be very effective.
Exactly. Think about it. You could have the most sophisticated data protection policy in the world,
Yeah.
but if you don't have people who understand how to implement it
Yeah.
or the technology to support it, it's not going to do much good.
Right, it's like having a state-of-the-art fire truck, but no trained firefighters to operate it.
Precisely.
You need both to be ready for an emergency.
Exactly.
And that capacity gap, that's something that public servants really need to be thinking about, right?
Absolutely, both within their own agencies
Okay.
and in the broader data ecosystem.
Now, let's shift gears a bit
Okay.
and talk about striking that balance between privacy and innovation. We want to use data to do all this amazing stuff, right?
Yeah,
Improve public services, solve societal problems.
for sure.
but we don't want to do it at the expense of people's fundamental rights.
Absolutely. It's a delicate balancing act.
Yeah.
The report finds that countries are making progress in areas like breach notification.
So letting people know when their data has been compromised?
Exactly. But there are still gaps,
Oh.
particularly when it comes to things like protecting against algorithmic bias.
Okay, remind me what algorithmic bias is again?
It's essentially when algorithms, which are used to make decisions based on data,
Yeah.
end up perpetuating existing inequalities.
Oh, right.
Or even creating new ones.
So like if an algorithm used to allocate resources ends up favoring certain groups over others.
Exactly.
That's a huge concern, especially for public servants who are committed to serving everyone fairly and equitably.
Absolutely. And this is where things get really interesting for public servants on the front lines.
Okay.
They're the ones interacting with citizens, using data-driven tools, and making decisions that impact people's lives.
Yeah.
So how do you balance those competing priorities in your day-to-day work?
Right. It's a tough one.
What safeguards are in place to make sure you're using data responsibly and ethically?
Yeah, those are great questions, and I'm sure a lot of our listeners are thinking about that right now.
I'm sure they are. It's a lot to consider.
Yeah, it is.
Especially in a world where data is becoming increasingly central to everything we do.
It really is.
It is.
All right, well, let's talk about data sharing.
Okay.
Now, I get why it's important, collaboration, tackling big problems together, all of that.
Yeah,
But it also seems like, there's a potential for risk there.
for sure.
What if data falls into the wrong hands?
Right.
What if it's used for purposes that weren't intended?
Huge concerns.
So how do we make sure data sharing is done safely and responsibly?
Well, that's precisely why robust data governance frameworks are so crucial.
Okay.
But the report actually reveals a rather worrying trend.
Oh, no.
A lot of countries lack clear legal frameworks for data sharing.
So it's kind of like the Wild West of data out there.
In some ways, yeah.
Everyone's making up their own rules as they go along.
And that creates a lot of uncertainty,
Yeah.
mistrust, and missed opportunities.
Yeah, I bet.
Imagine an agency wants to share data with a research institution
Okay.
to develop a new program that could benefit thousands of citizens.
Right.
But without clear guidelines, they might hesitate, fearing legal repercussions or reputational damage.
Oh, yeah.
And as a result, a potentially life-saving project could be delayed.
Wow.
Or even scrapped altogether.
That's a perfect example of how this lack of clarity can have real-world consequences.
Absolutely.
This isn't just some abstract policy issue.
No.
It's about people's lives.
Exactly.
And their well-being.
Yeah. So it sounds like we need strong leadership from public servants.
We do.
People who are willing to champion data sharing, advocate for clear guidelines,
Yes.
and demonstrate the value of collaboration. It's not just about following the rules. It's about shaping the rules.
Yeah, pushing for a more data-driven approach to public service.
Absolutely.
Okay, so that's data sharing.
Yeah.
Now let's talk about actually putting data to work.
Okay.
We've got all these robust frameworks. We're sharing data responsibly. But how do we make sure that data is actually being used effectively
Right.
to improve people's lives? I mean, that's the whole point.
Right. That's the goal. And that's where the concept of data literacy comes in.
Okay, data literacy, so it's not enough to just have access to data.
Right.
Public servants actually need to understand how to use it.
Exactly. They need to know how to interpret it,
Okay.
analyze it, and use it to make informed decisions.
So it's not just about being tech savvy.
No.
It's about being data savvy.
Precisely. Data literacy is about developing a critical eye for data.
Oh, okay.
Being able to ask the right questions, spot potential biases, and extract meaningful insights.
I can see how that would be valuable for public servants across all sectors.
Absolutely.
I mean, whether you're working in healthcare, education, transportation, you name it.
Yeah.
Being able to use data effectively can make a huge difference.
Huge difference. Let's say you're working for a city government.
Okay.
And you're tasked with improving traffic flow during rush hour.
Sounds like a fun job.
Right. By analyzing data from traffic sensors, public transit usage, even weather patterns.
Okay.
You could identify bottlenecks, optimize traffic light timing, and encourage alternative modes of transportation.
So instead of just going with your gut,
Yeah.
you're using data to make more informed decisions.
Exactly. And the beauty of data is that it can help us move beyond those gut feelings and assumptions.
Right. So it's like having a superpower.
It is.
But with great power comes great responsibility.
Absolutely. And that brings us back to the importance of data governance.
Yeah.
It's about ensuring that this superpower, this data superpower, is used wisely, ethically, and for the benefit of all citizens.
So it's not just about the data itself.
No.
It's about the people who are using it,
Yeah.
interpreting it, and making decisions based on it.
Absolutely.
So we need to create this culture of responsibility and accountability
We do.
around data within the public sector.
Exactly. And that culture needs to be cultivated from the ground up,
Okay.
starting with individual public servants and extending all the way to the highest levels of government.
It's a big task.
It is a big task, but it's essential.
All right, well, let's be realistic here for a second.
Okay.
Implementing these principles in the real world can be challenging.
It can be.
So what are some of the obstacles that public servants might face when they're trying to embrace data-driven decision-making?
Well, one of the biggest hurdles is often a lack of resources.
Resources.
Yeah, data infrastructure can be expensive.
You can.
And a lot of agencies are already operating on tight budgets.
Yeah, it's hard to prioritize investing in new technology or training when you're struggling to just meet basic needs.
Exactly. And even when resources are available, there can be resistance to change.
Resistance to change? How so?
Some people might feel uncomfortable with data-driven decision-making.
Okay.
Or see it as a threat to their expertise.
I can see how that could happen.
Yeah, it's natural to feel a bit apprehensive when new technologies or approaches challenge the way we've always done things.
Just like, hey, I've been doing this for 20 years, and now you're telling me there's a better way.
Exactly.
And then there's the issue of data silos.
Oh, yeah, huge issue.
Different agencies might have different data systems, different data formats, different ways of collecting and managing data.
Right, it's a mess.
Yeah.
This lack of interoperability.
There's that word again.
It makes it really difficult to share data effectively
Yeah.
and get a comprehensive view of a problem.
It's like trying to solve a puzzle where all the pieces come from different boxes.
Yeah, that's a great analogy.
You might be able to force some of them together, but you're never going to get the complete picture.
Exactly. And these are just a few of the challenges that public servants might encounter as they navigate this increasingly data-driven world.
So it's not always going to be smooth sailing.
No.
There are going to be bumps along the road.
For sure.
But the potential benefits of using data effectively are just too great to ignore.
I agree. And that's why it's so important for public servants to be champions for change, to advocate for the resources and support they need, and to push for a more data-literate and collaborative approach to public service.
So it's about seeing data not as a burden, but as an opportunity to make a real difference in the lives of citizens.
Exactly.
Okay, so before we move on to the next part of our deep dive, let's address the elephant in the room.
Okay.
AI.
AI, yes.
It feels like we're on the verge of a major shift in how public service operates.
I think we are.
And AI is right at the center of it.
It is.
It's the buzzword on everyone's lips these days. And for good reason.
Yeah.
It seems like AI has the potential to completely revolutionize everything we do.
Totally.
Including how we govern and deliver public services.
It has transformative potential.
It really does.
AI can help us automate tasks, analyze vast amounts of data, make predictions, and even personalize services in ways that were previously unimaginable.
So it's like having a super smart assistant who can help us do our jobs better, faster, more efficiently.
Sign me up.
Right?
But hold on a second.
Okay.
While AI offers tremendous possibilities, we can't just blindly embrace it without considering the potential downsides.
Right, because it's not all sunshine and rainbows.
It's not. There are risks and challenges we need to be aware of.
So what are some of the things we need to be thinking about?
Well, one of the biggest concerns is that AI systems can reflect and even amplify existing biases in the data they're trained on.
Oh, so if we're not careful, we could end up with AI systems that perpetuate discrimination and inequality.
Precisely. And that's why it's absolutely crucial to approach AI with a critical eye. To carefully curate the data used for training, to test for biases, and to ensure that AI systems are aligned with our values of fairness, equity, and accountability.
It's like we're handing over a powerful tool to an apprentice. We need to make sure they're well-trained and supervised before we let them loose on a real project.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah. So this is where data governance becomes even more important.
It does.
In the age of AI.
Absolutely. We need clear guidelines,
Okay.
ethical frameworks, and robust oversight mechanisms to ensure that AI is used responsibly and for the public good.
So it's about recognizing that AI is not a silver bullet.
No.
It's a tool.
A powerful tool.
That needs to be wielded with care and intention.
Absolutely. And that's precisely what we'll be exploring in the final part of our deep dive.
Okay, so stay tuned for that.
We'll delve into the specific challenges and opportunities of governing AI in the public sector.
Okay.
And discuss how public servants can become leaders in shaping a future where AI is used to empower, not to control.
I like that. Yeah. All right. Well, that's it for this part of our deep dive on data governance.
Okay.
But be sure to join us for the final part, where we'll be talking all about AI and its impact on the future of public service.
Sounds good.
See you then.
See you then. Welcome back to our deep dive into data governance.
So before the break, we were talking about data sharing.
Right.
And how that lack of clear guidance can really hold things back.
It can.
It's like we have all these great ingredients, but no recipe.
Exactly.
And we know data sharing is really important for tackling those big, complex problems.
It is.
But it's understandable why agencies might hesitate without those guidelines.
Absolutely. It's a risk.
And that hesitation can have some real-world consequences, right?
It can.
What about, like, collaborative research? Developing new solutions?
For sure.
Improving public services?
Absolutely.
All of that can be slowed down.
Hampered,
if we don't have that clarity around data sharing.
Totally.
Are there any, like, real-world examples of this?
Plenty, unfortunately.
Oh, okay.
Imagine a situation where a public health agency wants to partner with a university to analyze patient data, anonymized, of course.
Right, of course.
To identify trends and develop early warning systems for disease outbreaks.
That sounds like a great project.
It does.
Yeah.
But because of vague data sharing regulations, the agency is hesitant to move forward.
They're worried about legal challenges.
Yeah, legal challenges.
That's public backlash.
Exactly. And as a result, a potentially life-saving project could be delayed.
Or even completely abandoned.
Or even worse,
So this uncertainty, it's not just a theoretical thing.
It's not.
It has real impact.
It has real impact on people's lives.
It sounds like we need strong leadership from public servants in these situations.
Absolutely. We need individuals within government who are willing to champion data sharing, advocate for those clear guidelines, and demonstrate the value of working together.
So it's not just about following the rules, it's about shaping those rules. Pushing for a more data-driven approach.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've talked about data sharing.
We have.
Now let's talk about how we translate all this data into actual action.
Yeah, how do we make sure it makes a difference?
Right, we have these frameworks, we're sharing data responsibly. But how do we make sure it's actually being used effectively?
Right. To improve people's lives.
Yeah, I mean, that's the whole point, right?
That is the goal, and that's where data literacy comes in.
Okay, data literacy.
Data literacy
strategy. So what does that mean exactly?
So it's not enough to simply have access to data.
Okay.
Public servants need to understand how to interpret that data, how to analyze it, and how to use it to make good decisions.
So it's not just about being tech savvy.
No.
It's about being data savvy.
Data savvy, exactly.
All right, so what does it mean to be data savvy?
So data literacy is about developing a critical eye for data.
Okay.
You have to be able to ask the right questions, spot those potential biases, and really understand the insights.
Yeah, and I can see how that would be so valuable for public servants in all different sectors.
Absolutely.
Healthcare, education, transportation.
Wherever data is used.
Being able to use that data well can make a big difference.
It can. Let's say you work for a city government.
Okay.
And you're tasked with improving traffic flow during rush hour.
That sounds like a fun challenge.
Right, by analyzing data from traffic sensors.
Okay.
Public transit usage, even weather patterns.
Okay, so you're looking at all these different data points.
All these different factors.
Yeah.
You can start to identify those bottlenecks, optimize traffic light timing, and encourage alternative modes of transportation.
So instead of just relying on your intuition, you're using data to back up your decisions.
Exactly. You're making data-driven decisions.
And that's powerful.
It is. The beauty of data is that it can help us move beyond those gut feelings and assumptions.
Right. So it's like having a superpower.
It is a superpower.
But with great power comes great responsibility.
You got it.
Yeah. And that brings us right back to data governance.
Back to data governance.
Making sure that this data superpower is used ethically and for the benefit of everyone.
It's about responsibility. It's about using data wisely.
So it's not just about the data itself.
No.
It's about the people who are using it, the people who are interpreting it,
Absolutely.
the people who are making decisions based on that data.
It's about the human element.
And that means creating a culture of responsibility.
A culture of responsibility.
And accountability around data within government.
And that culture needs to be nurtured from the individual public servant all the way up to the highest levels of government.
All right, so let's be realistic for a minute.
Okay.
Putting all of this into practice can be tough.
It can be.
What are some of the challenges that public servants might face when they're trying to embrace data-driven decision-making?
Well, one of the biggest challenges is a lack of resources.
Resources, yeah.
Data infrastructure, it can be expensive, and lots of agencies are operating with limited budgets.
It's hard to prioritize those new investments.
It is.
When you're just trying to keep the lights on.
Exactly. And even when you do have the resources, there can be resistance to change.
Resistance to change.
People might feel uncomfortable with data-driven decision-making.
Uncomfortable in what way?
Maybe they feel like it threatens their expertise.
Oh, like they're being replaced by an algorithm.
Yeah, something like that.
And that can be scary.
It can be, and it's natural to feel a little bit apprehensive.
Especially when these new technologies challenge the way things have always been done.
Yeah, when it changes your workflow.
And then there's data silos.
Data silos, a huge problem.
Different agencies have different systems.
Different systems, different formats.
Different ways of doing things.
It's a lack of interoperability.
That word keeps coming up.
It's a key concept.
Yeah.
And it makes it really difficult to share data and get a clear picture of the problem.
It's like trying to build a tower.
Okay.
With bricks of all different shapes and sizes.
I like that analogy.
It's not going to be very stable.
No, it's not going to be efficient.
And that's just a few of the challenges.
A few of the many
that
public servants might face as they navigate this data-driven world.
So it's not always going to be easy.
No.
There are going to be obstacles along the way.
For sure.
But the potential benefits of using data, well, those are huge.
They are. Too big to ignore.
It's about seeing data as an opportunity.
Yeah.
Not as a burden.
An opportunity to make a real difference.
Now, before we move on, we have to talk about AI.
AI, the elephant in the room.
It really is, and we've touched on it a bit already. But it's clear that AI is going to play a massive role in the future of all this.
It's going to be transformative.
And it's the buzzword everyone's talking about these days. And for good reason.
It has the potential to change everything.
Yeah?
How we collect and analyze data, how we make decisions.
How we interact with citizens.
It's a whole new world.
But as we've been discussing, we can't just blindly jump into this new world.
Right. We need to be thoughtful.
Without thinking about the potential downsides.
We do. We have to be responsible.
One of the key takeaways from the Global Data Barometer is that human oversight is still really important.
It's crucial. We can't just hand everything over to the machines.
So public servants, they shouldn't expect to be replaced by robots anytime soon?
Not quite. But their roles are going to evolve.
Okay. In what way?
Public servants are going to need to become skilled at working with AI. Understanding its limitations, and ensuring it's used for good.
So it's more of a partnership.
A partnership, not a replacement.
Okay, that makes sense.
Public servants will need to develop a certain level of AI fluency.
AI fluency, what does that mean?
It doesn't mean they need to become programmers.
Okay.
But they need to understand the basic principles of how AI works, the potential biases it can introduce, and how to interpret the results it produces.
So it's about asking those critical questions.
Yes, asking questions like, where did this data come from?
Okay.
How is this algorithm trained? Are there any blind spots here?
Right. And being able to challenge the recommendations of those AI systems when necessary.
Absolutely. AI should support human judgment.
It shouldn't replace it.
Exactly.
What kind of training or resources do you think would be most helpful for public servants who are trying to, get up to speed on all this?
I think we need a multi-pronged approach. That includes technical training on those core AI concepts, workshops on ethical considerations, and even simulations or case studies where public servants can practice using these tools in real-world scenarios.
So it's about moving beyond those theoretical discussions.
It is.
And giving people the practical skills they need.
Exactly. Hands-on experience.
Yeah, that makes sense. And we also need to establish some clear guidelines for AI. Right.
Absolutely. Clear guidelines and standards for how AI is developed and used in the public sector.
So like a rule book for AI
Kind of, yeah.
to make sure it's playing by the rules.
To make sure it's used ethically and responsibly.
And that would include things like ethical principles?
Yes. Ethical principles for AI, use mechanisms for auditing those systems.
Okay.
Making sure they're fair and unbiased.
Right. And making sure someone is accountable for those AI-driven decisions.
Accountability is key.
Yeah, it makes me think about that idea of explainability in AI.
Explainability, yeah.
Being able to understand how an algorithm arrived at a particular decision.
Right. Transparency is crucial.
Especially in government.
Especially in government, citizens need to understand how these decisions are being made.
And they need to be able to challenge those decisions if they feel like something's not right.
If they feel like an algorithm is biased.
Yeah, and that reminds me of something we talked about earlier. Data standards.
Data standards, they're essential.
It seems like that push for interoperability
Yes.
and standardized data formats.
It's going to become even more important as AI becomes more prevalent.
It's like if different agencies are using all these different data formats and different AI systems that can't talk to each other.
Right. It creates a fragmented landscape.
Yeah, where collaboration and oversight become really difficult.
It's like trying to build a tower with bricks of different sizes and shapes.
We're back to the bricks.
Like a good analogy.
It's not going to be very stable or efficient.
Exactly. So as we move into this AI-driven future, investing in data standardization is going to be more critical than ever.
So we're just scratching the surface here.
We are. It's a complex and evolving topic.
And that's what makes it so fascinating.
It is fascinating, this intersection of data governance, AI, and public service.
It's full of challenges.
And opportunities.
It really makes you wonder what the future holds.
But what will public service look like in 10 or 20 years?
Yeah, how will AI change the way we work, the way we interact with citizens, the way we solve problems?
These are the big questions we need to be thinking about now.
Yeah.
And public servants, they have a unique opportunity to shape this future.
To make sure AI is used to empower citizens.
To create a more just and equitable society.
It's a call to action.
It is a call to action for everyone in the public sector.
We can't just sit back and watch this happen.
We need to be active participants.
We need to shape this future in a way that benefits everyone.
Exactly. It's a time for bold leadership.
Creative thinking.
And collaboration.
And a time for all of us to keep learning.
To stay informed.
And to keep asking those critical questions.
About how we can use these tools to create a better world.
Well said. All right. That's a great place to wrap up this part of our deep dive on data governance.
Okay.
But be sure to join us for the final part.
Yes, the final part.
Where we'll be discussing AI in even more detail.
Looking at the specific challenges and opportunities.
And discussing how public servants can be leaders in this new AI-driven world.
It's going to be a good one.
We'll see you then.
See you then.
So, welcome back to our deep dive. And before we moved on, we were starting to really get into AI.
Right. We were talking about how it's poised to really change the landscape of public service.
It feels like we're right on the edge of a massive shift.
That's a pivotal moment, that's for sure.
AI could change how we collect and analyze data, make decisions, even how we interact with citizens. It's huge.
And the Global Data Barometer really highlights that even with all the excitement around AI, human oversight is still absolutely essential.
So we're not quite ready to hand over the reins to the robots.
Not just yet, but public servants will need to adapt, become skilled at working alongside AI, understanding what it can and can't do.
It's more about collaboration, right?
Exactly, a partner.
So what does that look like in practice?
Well, for one, public servants will need to develop a certain level of AI fluency.
AI fluency.
It doesn't mean everyone needs to become a programmer, but they need to grasp the basics.
Okay, the basics being
how AI works, the potential for bias, how to interpret what the systems are telling us.
So it's about asking the right questions, like, hold on, where did this data even come from?
Exactly, and how is this algorithm trained? What assumptions are baked in?
And not being afraid to push back if something seems off.
Right. AI should be a tool to help us make better decisions, not to replace human judgment altogether.
So what kind of training do we need to get public servants ready for this?
I think it has to be multi-pronged, some technical training on AI concepts for sure.
Okay.
But also workshops on the ethical side of things, maybe even simulations where people can practice using these tools.
That hands-on experience would be really valuable.
It would, and alongside training, we also need clear guidelines, standards for how AI is developed and used in government.
Almost like a rule book for AI, make sure it's being used responsibly.
Exactly. Define those ethical principles, figure out how we're going to audit these systems to check for bias.
And make sure someone is clearly accountable for those AI-driven decisions.
Absolutely. Transparency and accountability are paramount, especially when it comes to something as powerful as AI.
It makes me think about that explainability concept, being able to trace how an algorithm got to a certain outcome.
That's crucial. Citizens have a right to understand how these decisions are being made and to challenge them if necessary.
And it all ties back to those data standards we were talking about earlier.
Right. It does. If we have all these different systems that can't talk to each other, oversight becomes almost impossible.
So it's like building a tower with mismatched bricks again.
Exactly. So as we enter this new era of AI, investing in data standardization is going to be more important than ever.
So we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive.
We have, from the big picture of data governance to the very specific challenges and opportunities of AI.
It's complex, it's evolving rapidly, and that's what makes it so fascinating.
And what makes it so crucial for public servants to be engaged, to be asking these questions, to be shaping this future.
Because ultimately, it's about using these powerful tools to create a better world.
A more just, equitable, and sustainable world.
And that's a goal worth striving for.
Absolutely. It's a call to action for all of us.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, we encourage you to keep learning, keep questioning, and keep pushing for that better future.
Don't be afraid to be part of the conversation.
Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
Until then.